bringing you the stories behind the standards. This is the BSI Education Podcast with Matthew Childs and Cindy Paragill. Today's episode is on the BSI Standards Awards.
Hello, my name is Matthew Childs, Education Manager at BSI, and the aim of this podcast is to bring you the stories behind the standards. Now, every year, thousands of standards makers get together to agree best practice and produce standards for all sorts of products, services and processes. And also every year, thousands of organisations use those standards to help make the world a better place in which to live, work and play for everyone. Now, I don't know about you, but I think that sounds like something worth celebrating. So, this episode of the BSI Education Podcast is all about the BSI Standards Awards. I spoke to BSI's Gracia Molaso to find out what the awards are all about.
So standards make life better for everyone, and they affect every part of our daily lives, from our work experiences to our personal choices. Whether we're trying to choose a smartphone or protect our company from cyber attacks, standards make it easier to make good decisions. They can also help governments to make better decisions too, and they can make organizations more successful and socially and environmentally responsible. So the BSI Standards Awards are all about an annual celebration of standards and the people who make and use them.
And are there different types of awards?
Yes, so we have two different types of awards. The first is for standards makers. These awards recognize exceptional contributions to standards making by standards makers, and they are for individuals either serving on BSI standards committees or have recently retired from these committees. And the second type of awards is for standards users. These awards recognize organizations that have used standards to achieve a particular outcome for a specific project, a product, or even a service. Now, these awards are for all organizations, regardless of their size, type, their sector, or their relationship to BSI.
And how long has BSI been celebrating standards makers and users in this way?
So we've been doing this since 2014. So this will be the 7th edition of the Standards Makers Awards. We launched the Standards Users Awards in 2019. So this will be the second year of the Standards Users Awards. It's worth saying that in 2020, we created a special edition to recognize the individuals and organizations that made amazing contributions to standards in new or unprecedented ways to support the UK's response to the COVID-19 pandemic. So for this year's awards, we are back to our usual format.
Now, does each type of award then have different categories?
Yes, for the Standards Makers Awards, there are 9 categories. These include Best New Member. This category recognizes an exceptional contribution by a standards committee member who has been on the committee for 5 years or less. Representing consumers. This recognizes an exceptional contribution by a consumer representative who has made sure the needs of consumers were recognized during the development of a standard. Education about standardizations, to recognize an exceptional contribution in integrating standards into a university curricula and supporting student research into standards. And also we have the category of outstanding and sustained impact, to recognize an exceptional contribution over a standards development career. The winner of this category will be awarded the Wolf Barry Medal, which is tantamount to a Lifetime Achievement Award.
Okay, that's standards makers. How about the categories for the standards users awards?
Yes, so just like the Standards Makers Awards, the Standards Users Awards also has 9 categories, and these include productivity. This is for where standards have been used to increase the productivity of a team, department, or the entire organization. Cost savings, where standards have helped deliver cost savings for a project, a product, or a service. Sustainability, recognizing where standards have been used to make sure an organization is operating in an environmentally sustainable or responsible way. And one more to highlight here, the category of international trade. Now, this is where an organization has used standards to improve the international trade or market access for a project, product, or service.
So what has winning an award meant to previous winners?
Well, winning one of our awards means a lot. For the Standards Makers Awards, this is recognition of outstanding contributions from among the standards makers community. So even to be nominated from amongst the thousands of standards makers, let alone win, is a significant achievement. And for the standards users, being nominated and winning is also a significant achievement, as nominations can come in from any type of organization in any sector.
Now, talking about previous awards winners, let's hear from Irina Brass, Associate Professor at University College London's Department of Science, Technology, Engineering and Public Policy, or STEEP. In 2019, Irina won the BSI Standards Award for Education about standardisation. I spoke to her about how and why she integrates standards into her degree programmes. But I started by asking her what it meant to her to win the award.
It's meant a lot. It's such a privilege and really an absolute honor to have received the BSI Standards Makers Award for Education about Standardization. I am very proud to be both an academic, working at UCL, teaching and researching about the regulation of technological and scientific innovations, how we govern these innovations responsibly, but also someone who is actively involved in standards making, having chaired the BSI Committee on Standards for the Internet of Things for a number of years now.
And how about for STEEP and the wider university? What has it meant for them, do you think?
So actually, it's been brilliant. After winning the BSI Standards Award for Education, I got nominated for and actually won a university award for delivering innovative research-based education about standards. This was not only recognition for the work I had done in order to integrate standards into postgraduate degree programs, as we've seen at STEEP, but also for the partnership that we had developed with the BSI as a result of doing that. It's so great for this sort of work to be given such a high profile across UCL. I feel very proud of it.
So this particular award then is for education about standardisation. Why is this particular issue so important to you?
Well, I've been teaching and researching in the area of responsible innovation for more than 10 years now. And pretty early on, it became clear to me that the relationship between standards, regulation, and policy is often misunderstood. And as a result of that, it's being also understudied and under-researched. So I thought that more needs to be done in order to explore not just, for instance, how industry might adopt and use standards, but also importantly, the role standards might play in supporting public policy objectives, such as consumer protection, facilitating trade, for instance, enabling innovation, and so on. So, in my experience, more often than not, education about standards falls between disciplines, especially in higher education. Of course, there are a few exceptions, and we've seen this in some design courses, some engineering courses, construction courses, for instance, as well. But on the whole, standards are not as widely taught or researched as much as we would like them to be. There are gaps here that really need to be bridged. So for the benefit of our students, the next generation that we teach, I felt it's important to bridge those gaps.
So that's the why then, but what about the how? I guess this is what the judges liked about what you do?
So, as I said, my ambition is and has always been to bridge the gaps in both teaching and research about standards. Luckily for me, BSI is a very passionate and active promoter of education about standardization too. So what we did is to establish a great partnership between BSI and UCL STEEP, in particular for our Masters of Public Administration in Digital Technologies and Policies, focused on standards. So now standards feature across a number of courses. And I'm just giving here two examples, for instance, in risk assessment and governance, and a course that explores emerging dilemmas in digital technology policy. And so as you can see, these are two areas where standards play such a critical role: risk and emerging digital technologies around cybersecurity, around AI, etc. So it is really great to see students learn about the history of standards making in these different domains, how they are used, and ultimately to also see how interested they are when they pick a standard and read it for the first time and discover what the standard is about in these areas.
So how do you go about integrating standards into teaching and research?
So I'll take one example of our collaboration here. We collaborated on two very successful MPA final dissertation group projects. So for instance, one was focusing or looking at the standardization challenges for SMEs developing products or solutions linked to the Internet of Things. Another collaboration between BSI and UCL STEEP within our master's program was on the standards and regulation challenges for connected and intelligent medical devices, looking at issues around cybersecurity, safety, data integrity, etc. So they are really high quality, and they were really high quality projects. A great learning experience for the students, but also producing practical guidance for BSI. So overall, it was a win-win. And a beautiful byproduct of both projects has been that many of the students have secured fantastic jobs also because they worked on these projects. Some have even become standard makers themselves, actively involved in BSI committees or other committees in other standards making organizations. For me, this integration of standards across education, research, and practice is fundamental if we want really to train the next generation of decision makers to fully understand the regulatory and governance ecosystem for emerging technologies and scientific innovations, because standards play such a fundamental role in these domains.
And finally, how about the future? Where do you go next?
So, we've developed a model that works really well. So we will look, of course, to develop and strengthen that model, including the partnership with the BSI. What excites me is how genuinely interested students are in learning about standards. And equally, how much organizations are looking for potential employees who have knowledge and skills in this space.
So, who can make nominations for the awards?
For the Standards Makers Awards, nominators must be serving members of BSI committees or current BSI employees. For the Standards Users Awards, nominations can come in from anywhere. Organizations can also nominate themselves or their own project, product or service. So this is your chance to toot your own horn for these awards. Although organizations can also be nominated by a third party too.
And how do people nominate?
Dead easy. You do this through our simple online form. You nominate the individual or organization for a category and then write a short supportive statement. I do want to take this chance to say, please read through the criteria and guidance before filling in the application forms, just so that you are aware on who can and cannot be nominated. And it's a pretty straightforward form, just under 5 minutes to complete. Simples.
And what's the nomination deadline?
The nomination deadline is the 17th of September, so please get cracking and nominate now.
And when do we discover the winners?
The winners will be announced at the Standards Conference, an awards event, which will be held on the 18th of November.
And I suppose perhaps most importantly, how can people find out more?
All the information you need to know about the awards and to make your nominations is in one place. Please go to bsigroup.com/standards awards. Get nominating now.
You have been listening to an episode of the BSI Education Podcast. Subscribe to us now, wherever you get your podcasts.
You just heard a Stripped Media production.